Hi everyone, this is Vladimir, and today we will be speaking about daily stand-ups in Agile, and we will be focusing mostly on the Kanban style of these daily stand-ups. Compared to Scrum, the format of Kanban stand-up is very different. In Scrum, it is very typical that each team member speaks and each team member provides a structured report of what he did yesterday, what he will be doing today, and what were the problems that he encountered during his work. And this basically goes through all team members, and each team member needs to provide this report for himself or herself. In Kanban, the format of these daily stand-ups is very different. In Kanban, not everybody necessarily needs to speak. It is important instead to focus on the overall flow of work in the system and to observe the bottlenecks within the flow and to address them. So instead of providing a detailed report of what individual team members did yesterday and what is their plan for today, team just looks into the bottlenecks and speaks about them. Another aspect of the inspection of the flow of work is that the team should focus on completion of the items. So any items that are too long in a specific status should be identified and discussed. And the person who is responsible for the fulfillment of this work item, typically an assignee of a ticket on the board, needs to explain the team why this is taking so long. This again requires the team to have manageable granularity of backlog items. By the way, I made a special video on backlog granularity. I recommend you to watch this. So if the team has manageable granularity of backlog items and the items takes clearly too long, let's say that the work items should have granularity of 2 to 3 man days, which is the optimal granularity from my perspective. And the team sees on the stand-up meeting that the work item is already in progress status for, let's say, 4 or 5 days, then something is going wrong with this ticket and it clearly needs to be addressed. So such tickets need to be discussed, and the team needs to take corresponding actions to address this problem. And for example, they can reorganize. People may help the person who is blocked or has a lack of time to work on the issue. So the team needs to self-organize to address these long in progress work items that are clearly visible on the board. In Jira, for example, such tickets are identified by the number of dots that are located in the bottom part of the ticket, and such tickets can be clearly visible on the Kanban board. Another thing that needs to be checked during the Kanban stand-up is whether there are any breaches to defined WIP limits. As you probably know, Kanban is based on WIP limits. WIP limits are one of the basic pillars of Kanban. So every Kanban team needs to have WIP limits set on their steps in their workflow, and those WIP limits need to be clearly indicated on the Kanban board. Any breaches need to be identified on the stand-up meeting and need to be thoroughly discussed. The team is responsible to find the root cause why the WIP limit was breached and to take corresponding actions to prevent this breach from happening next time. Another thing that the team needs to do on the daily stand-up in Kanban is that they must find any blocking issues. And if there are any problems that are blocking the flow of work in the system and are preventing the team from delivering, then the team must take corresponding actions that will remove the blockers, the impediments, and will allow the work to flow fluently through the system. In Kanban stand-up, people very often tend to follow more the status report format of the meeting instead of focusing on the flow of work. This is the most common mistake that I see every day. And people must change their mindset. They must change the way of thinking and why they should be providing the status report if the status is clearly indicated already on the board. There is clearly visible who is working on which work items and what is the status of the work items. This is clearly indicated on the Kanban board. Why to speak extra on this topic and waste time of everybody who is present on the meeting? This simply does not make sense on the Kanban stand-up. Instead, team must focus on the flow of work and on the blockers. Very common mistake in Kanban teams is that the blockers are not clearly identified on the Kanban board. The purpose of the Kanban board is to clearly visualize the flow of work in the team. And if the reality is not reflected on the board, which includes the clear identification of blockers on the board, then the Kanban board does not meet its purpose. Having the impediments or blockers clearly identified on the board enables the team to discuss those blockers on the stand-up meeting. If there is no visual identification of such blockers, it is easy for the team to ignore the blocker and just skip it. So this needs to be prevented at all costs. Another thing that is frequently ignored on the Kanban stand-ups is that the team just ignores WIP limits and just behaves like there are no WIP limits and there are no breaches to the WIP limits. That's possibly the worst scenario of the Kanban stand-up. Those WIP limit checks must be a regular part of each Kanban stand-up. Anybody who manages the team, if there's any team lead or agile coach, should make sure that this topic is always discussed on the Kanban stand-up. So the team needs to look at the Kanban board, and if there are any WIP limit breaches, the team must then identify the root cause why this happened and must take preventive actions to prevent this from happening the next time. This is part of the continual improvement culture, so-called Kaizen culture, and it should be incorporated into the team culture and should become part of the team working procedures. Another problem that you can see quite often is that the team uses the daily stand-up meeting as a planning. So they just replenish the input queue if they have any on the Kanban board. They just prioritize the backlog and so on. This is not the purpose of the daily stand-up meeting. The daily stand-up meeting should just quickly synchronize the team and it should not serve any planning purposes. So team should avoid that. And also this means that the team needs to hold another ceremony which is focused on the planning and not to do that on the stand-up meetings. Another thing that is very frequently overlooked in Kanban stand-ups is that the team just ignores any performance metrics and does not do even a brief check of their performance metrics. I believe that teams should, at the end of the stand-up, ideally, take at least a brief look at their performance metrics and see what are the trends. Speaking about the base metrics, I would name, for example, what is the throughput of the team, what is the lead time, if there are any SLAs, how they follow the SLAs. So this should be inspected briefly. Do not spend too much time on this. If needed, there can always be scheduled a follow-up meeting on this if the team sees some negative trend which needs some deeper brainstorming, discussion, whatever. And they should just take a look at it so that it does not disappear from the radar. Another problem, which is basically shared problem with the Scrum style of stand-ups, is that sometimes some of the team members are not speaking at the meetings. Some people are introvert, they do not like to speak, but their opinion might be very valuable for the team. So if there's some impediment being discussed or some problem with the flow being discussed on the meeting, encourage everyone to participate and to contribute to the problem solving. This is very important, and if people see that they can openly speak within the team and that their opinion is valued, they will be speaking more frequently, and even introvert people will be encouraged to openly share their thoughts, which is very a valuable asset for the team productivity. Another obvious problem is that the Kanban meetings sometimes do not have any structure. It is good for the team to build solid habit and to follow the same structure of the stand-up meeting every single time. What I recommend is to keep following structure. First of all, open the board and identify any issues that are stuck in progress. Speak about them and discuss the problems. Then take a look into the WIP limits, why they are breached. Take a look into anything that might breach any potential SLAs or classes of service, policies related to the classes of service, and discuss them. Finally, take a look at the performance metrics. Then open discussion about any problems found and scheduling of a follow-up meeting with those who are interested. Another problem is that sometimes key team members are not present on the Kanban meeting. This is very problematic, and it is a nice habit, in case that I cannot participate on the meeting, to appoint somebody who provides the feedback for me. So, for example, if I have some blockers that need to be discussed or some findings that need to be discussed and I cannot participate on the meeting, then I know that typically in advance. So the easiest way is to pick up a phone or walk to my colleague and ask him to provide a report to the team so that the team can still discuss, even in my absence, what the problem is and can take corresponding actions to address the problems. So this is very important, you know. Nothing can stop the flow. Even the absence of a team member is not important if the team member handles the situation well. And this should be a habit that the team needs to build and to maintain in all Kanban meetings. One of the last problems is the lack of continual improvement on the stand-up meeting. On the stand-up meetings, it is necessary If any problem is found regarding WIP limits, flow, insufficient analysis, whatever, any problem needs to be identified, tracked, and corresponding actions must be taken to eliminate this problem in future. This Kaizen culture needs to be part of the team culture, and I cannot emphasize it more. It is not necessary to perform any brainstorming meetings for continual improvements directly on the stand-up meetings, but any suggestions or gaps that need improvement must be identified on the stand-up meeting and tracked somewhere. To summarize everything up, there are like 4 key points to focus on when doing stand-ups in Kanban. First, focus on the flow of work and its optimization. That's the first and very basic. Second, identify and discuss any blockers. Third, discuss why there are any breaches to WIP limits and observe the WIP limits. And finally, make continual improvement, make the Kaizen culture part of your team culture. Final recommendations: establish and follow the same Kanban stand-up meeting structure. Incorporate all the points that I discussed today. Make sure that everybody speaks up. Nobody should have any fear of speaking. There should be no atmosphere of punishment if somebody says something wrong. There's basically no wrong contribution to the meeting, but make sure that the meeting is very short. The meeting should be really straightforward, it should be unambiguous, it should be concise, and should go straight to the points that I mentioned. Any larger discussions should happen after the meeting in separate follow-up meetings. Focus on the flow instead of status report, and continually improve. That's basically it. If you follow these simple steps and those advices that I gave you today, you should make your Kanban stand-up meetings very fast and efficient, and they will really help you to quickly synchronize. And thanks to this simplified structure, and thanks to the fact that the Kanban stand-up is not a status report meeting, they can be pretty short. And even for larger teams that cannot do this in Scrum, like 15 or more people, the Kanban meeting is still very efficient way, because even when I had a team consisting of 15 developers and QAs, we were able to do the Kanban meeting still within 5 minutes, following this format. And this is also possible too. It would not be possible in Scrum if you follow the typical Scrum stand-up structure, and also it is not recommended to have such large teams in Scrum, but it is possible in Kanban with no problems. So just follow these advices that I gave you today, and I hope you will have some enjoyable Kanban stand-up meetings. I hope you liked this video. If you liked it, please leave me a comment or thumbs up. I will be very glad to see that someone finds this useful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!